Thanks for joining us on Forging the Future as we take the podcast on the road to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest 2023. As a sponsor for the Houston House, alongside Greater Houston Partnership, I had the chance to talk to a dynamic group of investors, founders, and contributors to the startup ecosystem. This episode, we're talking trending topics, SVB, AI, and Houston as a startup ecosystem. Let's dive in. Carrie, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris.
And we're in Austin today for South by, so that's pretty exciting, just down the street from Houston.
Absolutely. The city is abuzz with excitement for sure.
I feel like I'm in Houston here because I've run into so many people from Houston.
Yes.
Right? So maybe because we're hanging out at Houston House.
Well, we were out and about last night for dinner, and my daughter said, "This city is busy." Yeah, it always is, but it's exceptionally busy right now.
Yeah. Well, we live in interesting times, and one of the interesting things that happened, of course, in the last few days is the SVB failure.
Yes.
And I know all of our startups have been abuzz all weekend long since Friday about what should we do, how are we impacted, how is SoftTech Ventures impacted, et cetera. How about you? How did things happen for you in your portfolio?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I'm glad we're sitting here talking about this somewhat on the other side of it, since the FDIC and Fed shared last night that they're going to make depositors whole, so that's good.
Really good news.
Yeah, but it definitely was a tense few days for a lot of founders and investors. Curate itself didn't do any business with Silicon Valley Bank, but a couple of our portfolio companies did. Only 2 out of 15, which is probably less than the average considering how many venture-backed companies SVB banked. So, all in all, feeling fortunate, but it certainly was a lot of headaches and wrinkles and gray hairs that probably emerged over the last few days for some of our founders and us as we help them kind of navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Same with us. I mean, we weren't directly affected being here in Houston. But out of our 64 companies, I think only a few banked with SVB, and there was only one that had exposure past the $250K.
Okay.
But definitely good news that the FDIC recognized the fact that they can't have a run on all the banks out there because of loss of confidence, and that they've come in to support the founders. But what were you telling some of your founders that were asking you, or maybe that one that was affected?
Sure. So we had 2 that both had millions with SVB, and it represented all of their cash. Thankfully, one had just run payroll earlier in the week, so she had that covered. The other thought that they were going to be delayed on payroll this week. I'm not sure how that might look differently with the announcement last night that they would be made whole. But what we did was spend a lot of time talking to the bankers in our network. We're fortunate to have some senior level banking execs, both at community banks as well as national banks, as investors and friends of the fund. So we were just on the phone a lot trying to understand the options and getting additional bank accounts opened for them so that, this morning perhaps they could move money away from SVB. We thought it might just be the insured amount. Thankfully, hopefully it's more than that. So just kind of helping with the expertise in our network to guide them along that process. That was, kind of the most we could do with all of the unknowns. But
Were the banks stepping in for anything other than like, hey, you can open up an account with us, or how were they approaching it?
One dear friend of mine, he's got 35 years as a bank board member for a large national bank, and so he just has the industry knowledge that was reassuring. I mean, it pretty much aligned with what we were hearing elsewhere, but he was able to bring a level of kind of calm and patience and prudence to the situation. He was helping open accounts after hours, and no fees, no anything, just kind of going above and beyond. So super grateful for that. But beyond that, I think it gives us a lot of time to pause and look at what happened and what lessons we can learn from it. And I think one big thing that the community at large needs to talk about is whether or not this $250K that the FDIC insures is the right amount. Is that enough? My vote is it's not enough these days for possibly individuals, but certainly companies that are trying to run payroll and run their companies out of these bank accounts. And, some people say, well, just go open multiple accounts. Well, that's not really logistically or practically the best answer either.
Not when you have millions of dollars. You need 10 accounts just to do $2.5 million.
Well, exactly. Yeah. We had one company with over $3 million in cash there, and one company with over $1 million. So what are they going to do? What $3 million? How many would that be? A dozen or so bank accounts, and that's just not practical. Also a lot of these companies are used to having a balance, but then it dwindles somewhat quickly, through their burn rate and such. So there wasn't a lot of sophisticated treasury management going on at these companies. And that's not a slight on our portfolio companies or any. That's just kind of the nature of how these companies are used to running, right? It's money in, and then it goes out at a relatively quick pace. So you aren't necessarily concerned with, long-term returns or even, thinking of risk management like a traditional company might do. So I think there will be some, treasury management changes that companies need to look at going forward as well.
Yeah, I hope they look at it from the standpoint that I get why they have a $250K limit, and this is maybe just fine for a lot of individuals that aren't necessarily. I think originally they were thinking, well, businesses would do more due diligence on a bank and do, like you said, risk management. But I mean, it's not really possible even for a business to do this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just weeks earlier, financial. People like Kramer, et cetera, were saying that SVB was a great investment.
Right.
So how are you going to tell?
An A credit rating.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, there were no, red flags, at least publicly facing. If you really are a banking expert and dug beneath, it sounds like that maybe there were some cautionary signs, in the financials for the bank. But, the average consumer or business even is not going to necessarily see that. I think I saw the percentage of uninsured accounts was well over 90% there.
Yeah, 97, I think is what they said.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and then looking at it from that standpoint, if businesses are supposed to be doing the due diligence, right, that's exactly what happened in the end, where businesses suddenly got a little spooked that maybe there is something wrong at SVB, and all of a sudden $42 billion was withdrawn within 24 hours, right?
Right.
Which then caused the collapse of the bank. So I think the government is going to have to decide that there's a difference between personal accounts and business accounts.
Exactly.
And there's different levels of guarantees.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Or at least different parameters on how banks are supposed to manage the money.
Yes.
But the government also, I think, was really complicit in forcing this error, right? I mean, because of all the capital that came into the bank in the last couple of years, where they had like another $60 billion worth of deposits that they had to put to work.
Right.
And then having to put it somewhere, and then the mistake they made was putting it into longer term vehicles, and then the interest rates flipped.
That's right.
But from a startup perspective, I think it is an important lesson because things happen in business, right, that you really didn't even anticipate happening. And it's all about how do you react to that problem.
That's right.
How do you solve this problem that you didn't expect?
Yes.
Right? The chances, if you did SWOT analysis and this was one of your threats, it would have been a very small percentage. Like, well, what if our bank account closes and we suddenly don't have access to $1 million worth of capital? Yeah. It's really hard to have plans in place to mitigate that. But on the other hand, you do have to, work on the weekend and figure out what is our plan B and C, and how do we react to this, and how do we stay in business, and how do we survive this perfect storm that suddenly happened to us.
Yeah.
Right? So.
I think what you said encapsulates entrepreneurship in a nutshell, right? Is planning for the unexpected. And I've heard you give your story several times, and you had a lot of those moments in the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur, and it's planning for the unexpected. It's planning for what you can't plan for almost, right? Like being able to pivot and navigate those times of uncertainty and change.
Yeah.
And, I think going back to this specific situation, I think we really saw a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When people started to see those red flags, then everyone started getting spooked and urging their companies to pull money out, which then it becomes a prisoner's dilemma, right? Like there's literally no upside to keeping your money there, because if the bank fails, you lose. If you take your money out, you're okay. If you take your money out and the bank fails, well, then you have your money. There was like no winning option for staying there necessarily. And so once that momentum picked up, it just became a self-fulfilling prophecy of what was to happen there. Yeah. So, I don't know that there's really, blame or responsibility to pass around, but it's something to note of how things can change on the dime, with the momentum shifting in the perception of, bankers, of investors and clients' minds with what's going on at the bank, and it can just flip on a dime.
Well, I think that also, we always advocate for transparency, and to some extent, that's what SVB was doing about their situation, and say, this is our problem, we have to sell this bond portfolio at a loss, and we're going to raise some money, and then everyone, just, instead of really stepping in and trying to support them, decided to yank their money out, right, and pulled the rug out from underneath them. And I'm a little sad about that, because SVB has been a great proponent and partner in the venture space for 20 plus years, right? Yeah. And so I think there was a certain number of, some people call them bad actors, that really kind of forced the air and, encouraging everyone to pull their money out because of that reason. You said that, there's maybe no good reason other than, maybe trying to be a supporter when SVB was such a supporter for many startups when traditional banking wasn't. Right. As an entrepreneur, I've been sitting there many times, and bankers on the other side of the table, you think about risk management, but I've had them say things like, well, HP could go out of business tomorrow. And
That's
I'm like,
right.
well, if this is the scenario that I'm playing against in order to get money from a bank, then it's super difficult. And SVB actually was more of a operator friendly and understood how the whole process worked and was more of an advocate. But because of that, they had such a concentration in this market that was really also their undoing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something to be said for being loyal and supporting them, but when push comes to shove, people are going to preserve their own selves and pull their money out.
Exactly.
There was just no upside to staying there once the momentum started going that way. So
yeah, and one of the things we tried to do, like on our Slacks, was just try to give a little bit more of a game plan of how to think about this for the startups. Right?
Exactly.
Like, here are the things you can do, and then this is all you can do for right now until Monday. Right. And so, but yeah, interesting times indeed. I think the government made the right choice to support SVB, given that, if they didn't, there really was a big risk of all these startups and other companies banking there collapsing, and then the other banking system collapsing as well because of the run on all those banks. I heard that several companies pulling funds out of just other banks, right, for just out of panic.
And there were all sorts of rumors going around this weekend, and text messages and Slack channels and social media about other specific banks at risk, that people were pulling their monies from. So it becomes a dangerous and precarious situation when the rumor mill is causing action within the financial system.
Well, at least we're on the other side of it.
Yes. And onward and upward.
Thanks for joining us today. Good luck on your talk today. What's the topic?
It's about female founders.
Okay.
Yeah, getting funding and some of the challenges that are unique to women, fundraising, and all that sort of thing. On that note, we actually announced our latest investment today. We invested in a company called Dough, and they are a good-for-you Gen Z snack brand. And the founder is a Texan. She's originally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, went to school here at UT in Austin, started her career at Lay's, Frito-Lay's, PepsiCo, working in traditional junk food, did a stint in VC herself, worked for McKinsey, and then at the start of the pandemic had this idea to mix in good-for-you ingredients in snack foods, and she's killing it. She was on Shark Tank last year, and Robert, one of the sharks, called her the most impressive entrepreneur to stand on the stage. So,
wow.
Yeah. So we're super excited to work with her and her company. Yeah. She's got a really fun brand voice and perspective, and they've really just picked up a lot of momentum in a couple short years. So,
nice.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Sure. Enjoy the rest of your South by experience, and here's to good things here and back home in Houston.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I'm here with Rob Meadows from AI Foundation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, AI is a hot topic right now, right?
Too hot. Too hot.
Too hot. And you just finished a panel on AI. What was the topic?
We're talking about commercializing AI. What are the first commercial use cases for all of this crazy new generative AI technology?
Yeah.
It's a good discussion.
So what's the AI Foundation about? What are you guys trying to do?
Yeah, so we're a hybrid for-profit and nonprofit. We're an AI research lab and incubator. So our goal is to create interesting research around synthetic media, generative AI, emerging AI technologies, and then look for commercial use cases. And we have some creativity in how we start the ventures. We've spun things out, we've done joint ventures, and we're incubating our next one as a wholly owned entity. So kind of an exciting model.
So what does it mean to be like multimodal AI?
Yeah. I mean, we used to think training specific models to just do computer vision, to just do, audio synthesis and audio ASR and, NLP was the right approach because these models were tuned on specific data. But multimodal now says, actually, if you kind of look at the human brain, if I close my eyes and listen to you, I don't get it in my brain as well as watching your lips and listening to you and picturing what you're saying in my head. So kind of bringing all of these modes together, audio, visual, words, cognition, reasoning, gives you just a better overall result. And we've proven that now with, language models that can generate images. And, you kind of see with, super cool people who can, synesthesia and these types of things where you can start to cross modes in your brain, or, if you want to do the synthetic route to that and take some substances, you can kind of start to see how our brain mixes modes together as well. I think that's kind of the future of the next generation of AI.
Interesting. Well, I think search is going to go through that transformation too, right?
Absolutely.
So it's pretty archaic in how we do Google searching now, since it was something the same way we did it 15 years ago or so. And now I think it's pretty excited to see, being able to actually just ask in a normal question or a normal prompt, give me this information.
Yeah. I think that conversational interface where you're still kind of initiating a query or, something you want solved with the AI, and then having a way to drill down to what are you really trying to get at? I know a little bit about you. I can personalize the results is the next logical step. Beyond that, I think AI should start to read your mind. Why did I have to tell you I'm looking for something? Why didn't you just guess that I was going to look for this and tell me the answer before I needed to know it, type of thing? So.
Interesting. Well, speaking of mind reading, I just saw an article recently where they're having people picture an image or look at an image in their mind, and they were able to actually read the mind, the brain waves, and recreate the image in something that looks like 80% or more accuracy.
Yeah. Super cool stuff. Yeah. I've been watching, early days of the EEGs where you could play a video game and make it go left or right by thinking it. But now as we're getting higher and higher fidelity and better understanding and mapping of brain patterns, I think there's a lot we can do there. Still a ways away from, the Neuralink plug into your brain, but I think that's where we have to get to.
Well, when you said that the AI should actually predict what you needed or wanted, I mean, what is it basing that prediction on?
Yeah. I think of it as, if you have a best friend or a life partner that you guys just spend so much time together, they just really get to know each other. You can start to complete their sentence and see a look on their face and, I know what you're thinking right now. That's the relationship we need to have with AI in the future, where it's just so trusted, mutual trust there, and it watches your facial expressions, AI can read micro expressions better than the best trained humans can now, and watches all your behaviors, etc. It's crazy. I have to wake up every morning and start my sleep cycle app, and half the time it's not even there as a recommended one to start. I start that every morning. AI should know these patterns and predict these types of things.
So if I'm a startup and I want to take advantage of the type of AI that's available now, what would I do? Would I go to the AI Foundation, or where would I look, or how would I apply something to, a business that maybe isn't just I'm an AI business, right?
Yeah, a startup first needs to figure out what problem are they solving and what's their business model. Just jamming AI into everything right now is, not going to not going to lead to viable business models. You know, these large language models are fairly expensive still, and are going to just probably get more and more expensive for the higher powered ones over time. So, you know, there are use cases where AI makes sense, but not everything needs to be a chatbot right now. Not everything needs to do machine learning. There's just not enough data in most startups to do that. So, you know, I would get familiar with the generative AI technologies out there and think about that as just another tool. But it's like a web server to me. A large language model is just the next web server. Not every startup needs a web app. A lot do, but what problem are you solving, and how are you going to make money with it? But yeah, I mean, where would you get started? You know, partnering with companies like yours, partnering with, you know, experts out there that have played with these technologies a lot to just start to brainstorm where might you plug that in and how. I think it's a good place to start.
And are there places in Texas where this type of work is really, you know, excelling? I mean, is it Austin? Is it Houston? Is it somewhere else?
I mean, I think the cool thing about this newest generation of, you know, prompt engineering, it's ubiquitous. I mean, just in the session we just had, we asked how many people play with ChatGPT. Literally every single person raised their hand. So it's everywhere now. I mean, this is now, you know, again, back to the web development paradigm. You know, I think it was very hard to be a web developer in 1997, but not so much now. You just drag and drop your website. So I think we're going to get to that point. So I think there's an opportunity, you know, not just in Texas, but a level playing field here for people to jump into this.
Is there going to be a position like prompt engineer?
There already is.
Yeah.
Prompt engineering is a new role, and, you know, that learning how to kind of keep AI on the rails and get what you want out of it and these types of things. It's more of an art than a science right now, and I think it's just going to continue to evolve. So
it's interesting. Yeah, because I know, like, for engineers that try to Google something, we know like how to create a Google prompt. It's certainly not as complicated as prompt engineering for Jet AI, but people know how to Google well, and some people or most people don't. Right? You know, because they don't understand how the keyword and the frequency and the pairing of those frequencies actually can get you better search results, right? So, but hopefully at some point you won't actually like need a prompt engineer in order to get what you want out of the AI, right? But I get that it's kind of an in-between.
Put on your EEG hat and think it, and you'll get it.
Yeah, well, I'd be up for that. How's South by been for you? I mean, have you gone to South by before? Or is it?
Yeah, this is, you know, it's interesting. Last year was all about crypto and NFT and metaverse and, you know, big parties with lots of money thrown at it. I think this year is people are asking more questions this year. There's less, you know, crypto is the future, confidence, it's all metaverse. Now it's like, what is going to happen to companies now? What does generative AI mean? What was a bank failing? What does that mean? So just a lot of questions at South by, but it's fun to talk to smart people here.
Interesting. Well, thanks for coming on and telling us a little bit more about AI. I'm really looking forward to living in this future.
So we're going to launch in about a month here, AI.xyz. You'll be able to sign up, and for $20 a month, create your own AI that'll start doing these things for you.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm signing up.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Sure. I'm here today with Susan Davenport, the Chief Economic Development Officer for the Greater Houston Partnership. Well, thank you for being on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're here in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest, but we're going to talk about Houston today.
We are.
And I know we're partnering together at the Houston House here.
Exactly.
But one of the themes that we've been talking about today is how Houston is an up-and-coming innovation hub, right? And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what GHP is doing to help spur that along.
Yeah, well, from our organizational standpoint, we've been focused on this for quite some time. And I think working diligently with our partners throughout the region, companies like yourselves, Softtech, and then we also are working with our educational institutions, our city, and frankly, our entire regional 12-county region group of economic developers as well as companies that are scattered throughout our entire region, and focusing on that innovation that we think is so paramount to Houston's future as we go forward. You know, it's interesting. We're a $530+ billion economy. We have incredible strengths in energy, obviously, the energy capital of the world, but now looking at that low-carbon, energy-abundant future that we're working on through our Houston Energy Transition Initiative, and recruiting and growing companies to help enable that ecosystem to be what we know it can be, and giving Houston that full panorama of energy, but simultaneously through having and housing the world's largest medical center and several 100,000 square feet of innovation space that we are growing startups and new innovations in medical health delivery. We have that, and then commercial aerospace and aviation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our history, you know, as in space and through housing Johnson Space Center, and really looking at that next iteration of the commercial aspects of that. When you tie a bow around that in many ways, and you look at that and you recognize underpinning of this manufacturing powerhouse that can make so many things, the country's busiest port, being the number one exporter, we just have such opportunities in Houston, and we want to be sure that innovation pipeline that will fuel that next generation is strong and continuing. And that's why we appreciate so much what Softtech is doing and has been such a great contributor to this in our market.
So how is GHP organized exactly?
Yeah, well, great question. We get asked that often. And we are a partnership organization. And so I think our history will provide the answer that you're looking for. But we were founded in 1840 as the Houston Chamber of Commerce.
Really?
So we have been around quite a long time.
Okay.
In about 1989, we merged with the Economic Development Council of Houston, and we also are the World Trade Center for Houston. And so all of those things are put under this umbrella organization that is an economic development organization that really promotes the region. We have workforce development as part of our charge, public policy, effective policy for our business community on the local, state, and federal levels. We look at, again, we do deep research. We keep data, trends, analyses on our economy so that we can manage that particular aspect of Houston and make sure that we're providing the best future for Houston's economy that we can. And we, again, market it not just domestically, but all over the world.
Nice. I was not aware that it had been around that long.
Been around that long, yeah.
So I know your background, actually. You've been in Houston how many years now?
4.5 this time. But I also lived here in the 1990s as well. And have an undergraduate degree from UT Medical Branch.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then a master's at UT Austin. So.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But you were, so in between that time, you actually went to a few other regions, Florida, I think, and maybe California.
I did. Florida. Actually, I worked, after I received my graduate degree at UT Austin, I worked for the Austin Chamber for 13 years in economic development.
Oh, that's right.
And really undertook every aspect of economic development over that time period, and then was recruited to Gainesville, Florida, which is, as you know, the home of the University of Florida, looking also at technology innovation and commercialization from a community perspective, and was the president and CEO of their chamber for several years. And they got recruited back to Houston in 2018, in the fall of 18. And it was basically, I think, in large part, Houston was very interested in an innovation type economic development program. And so The underpinnings of that had been underway, and a strategy that identified these target sectors that, again, were ripe for innovation, and were desirous to build that in this region. And we began to execute that strategy. And that's what we've been hard at work in since 2018. And I think we're starting to see signs of progress there. And I'm very pleased with where Houston is right now.
When they recruited you back in 2018, what appealed to you about coming to Houston to be a member of this and drive this innovation initiative?
I think their vision, having lived here before and really understood the city, and as a young professional, it was such an amazing place to be. Intimately, everything interesting to see and do, the diversity, the international aspects of Houston, the people that lived here, the employees in the different businesses, and again, their perspectives from all over the world. I think as a young professional, it just left an indelible mark on me that I just have such respect for the city and loved what they were doing. When they were looking forward to tomorrow and they were looking at their best assets and they were understanding how innovation could make them even better and more valuable to the world, I think that was just an amazing opportunity for me to engage in that and bring what I had learned in my career in economic development. So it was a great opportunity.
Well, there's certainly been a lot of progress in the last 5 years, right? So from when you started in 2018 to 2023 now.
Most definitely.
Anything you would want to highlight there?
Yeah, I think our venture investment dollars, the record of that is strong. We eclipsed over $2 billion in 2021 and are moving quickly to eclipse that now even further. But even with that amount, maybe not sounding huge to others, that's a fourfold increase since 2018. So I'm incredibly pleased with that through a lot of work, but we have a long way to go and an opportunity to go much higher than that. We have over 8,800 tech startups and companies in that ecosystem, right? But again, room for so many more around what we're seeing now that these innovation pieces are coming to fruition. Probably 240,000 technology workers in many ways in some of the key sectors, and more around the various ecosystem pieces. But again, showcasing to young talent what Houston has to offer now, I think is really incredible. We're seeing such response, I think, as we go around the world now, and I'm very pleased with that. When you think about energy transition and how that speaks to this young, talented workforce, and then speaks to the acumen and the talent base that we have had around traditional energy, what a great combination to build these solutions for the future.
It's a mission. I think that really does help inspire, especially the next generation of workers, is they want to have a mission, and certainly energy transition is a great mission to be on, and Houston is making that transition from being the oil and gas capital of the world to the energy capital of the world, which means that there's a lot of other technologies that we're building in order to address that. So I think you're right. I've heard some criticism that there's, hey, we need more access to talent, but I mean, Texas is it's one of the largest states, right? And you have this ecosystem between Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin, among others, right? So there's a lot of technology and innovation workers here already, and we're attracting more and more. I don't remember the last stat on the inflows into the state even in the last year, right?
We're seeing a really strong response now, and then growing our own workforce, of course, and the uniqueness of our workforce, because we're such a diverse city, and again, such a global diversity, and ethnic majority, no ethnic majority here, just a really strong slice across the world. And again, just this young population that's growing. I think our median age is one of the youngest of the top 10 cities in the country.
Oh, really?
And so a great testament. And our educational institutions, really all of our educational pieces, especially 2 and 4 year and then K through 12 pipeline that they're putting forward. We collectively educate 440,000 students a year in this region.
Well,
through about 35 different institutions of higher education. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just an amazing statistic to have. And this 12-county region that I speak of, Greater Houston, we want to call it, has such diversity in places to live and small communities that surround it, but really create the fiber of our entire business ecosystem, right? And it's a wonderful opportunity to have that to work with.
Yeah. And I was at the Microsoft opened their Energy Transition Center of Excellence in Houston just last week. So fantastic space there that they've built out.
We're really feeling that momentum, but we don't take that for granted. We're working quite hard at the partnership to ensure that we continue this drive forward. We are visiting countries and parts of the United States with delegations of leaders who are participating in this outreach to make sure people understand Houston. It's one of the most interesting questions I get is understanding how Houston's, in its breadth and depth, really functions. Mm-hmm. And it's a great opportunity for us to tell that story. Our partnership has been very engaged in this, as have many others in our region. But I think convening is probably one of the strongest things that we've done, is helping bring our educational institutions to the table, our corporations, our incredibly successful companies, and all of those working in the innovation space, like, again, the venture studio that you're undertaking and working. I think those are the pieces with leaders like yourselves and others who can really showcase what it means to work in a city that appears so large, as the 4th largest city, but you can really find your niche, you can find your neighborhood, you can find where you want to be engaged, and it becomes such a wonderful experience for people, as it was for me when I was young.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for all you're doing, and I'm really looking forward to the next 5 years in Houston. I think it's going to be a really fun and exciting time, and appreciate your support.
Oh, of course. Well, thank you for all you're doing, and thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.